Welcome back to another week of Just Jossin. I am one half of your host, Sabrina Hannon.
And I'm the other half, Jasmine Heron. This week, we are back in the Hellmouth with one of my, I don't want to say least favorite episodes, but like most upsetting episodes, Wild at Heart. This is season 4, episode 6. This is an utterly heart-wrenching episode for the Willow Oz lovers. And
I think for everyone, because it is one of the most relatable episodes, right? Like, because you've either been the Willow or you're the Buffy who's experiencing your friend go through something like this. Although I think once you make it into adulthood, everyone's experienced what Willow is experiencing. Like just the pure heartbreak. And it's done so well. And this is one of those episodes that really melds the supernatural and reality really well in telling a very human story.
yep. And as I keep finding out with most of my like favorite in terms of memorable episodes, this was written by Marty Noxon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she actually said that this is what she considers there being 3 Willow and Oz episodes, and this is the second. The first one being Phases, and then the last one being Seth Green's ever last appearance on Buffy.
Yep.
And this is actually the last episode in which Seth Green will appear in the opening credits.
Was that your fun fact, or do you have any more fun facts?
I have more. So, speaking of Seth Green, in 1985, Lindsay Krause, I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, the woman who plays Maggie Walsh, Professor Walsh, played Seth Green's mother in an ABC after-school special called I Want to Go Home. And in this episode, he almost kills her.
Okay.
So, when asked about it in an interview, the woman who plays Professor Walsh laughed and said, like, yeah, it's come full circle, really. And she said, like, it doesn't often happen in the acting world, but when it does, like, it's real fun. And my last fun fact, Giles lives at his apartment or house number. I guess it would be an apartment condo, maybe. It's 4666.
4666? Okay.
Yeah. And those are my fun facts.
So we start off with Buffy being chased by a vampire. And it looks like maybe, she's actively fleeing, but then she says, thank you for the relocation. She was just trying to avoid bystanders seeing her like fighting. And then she's like punning at the vampire as she stakes him, and he doesn't appreciate her puns. Like,
yeah,
she's kind of asking the air, like, why does nobody appreciate my punniness?
And there are some solid puns, like dads of today, take note, this is how you do it.
And so then we see, you think this is going to be a Spike episode, because you see Spike and he's watching from a distance and he's monologuing just as he has monologued previously.
And then
and then he gets tased.
And the initiative drags him away, and the opening credits start.
Yep. And again, it's such a bait and switch, because you're like, not Spike episode.
And it's a hilarious bait and switch. Like, the first time I watched it, not knowing about the initiative, I was like, giggle. And now knowing, I'm just like, wah ha 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 ha.
So we're at the Bronze after the credits, and the Scoobies are talking about, how they like being back at the Bronze, even though they're in college. And
it's Willow's place blanket, and Oz is Willow's person blanket.
yep, her safety blanket. And it's so cute to see their banter, like they're still, you know, like he's, oh, I thought I was your blanket. And then Giles shows up and they have a little bit of that conversation. And then Veruca's band, Shy, starts playing. And everybody, like, I want to say everybody, Buffy notices Oz's change in demeanor. Like, Oz and Xander and Giles are all like, oh, wow, Veruca, whose opening line is dip your finger in me. And
yeah, and so Buffy, so first she notices Oz and then quick darts to Willow and sees that Willow has also noticed and is like, there's this look on Willow's face like, help, like, you see this too, right? And, you know, Buffy tries to engage Oz in conversation. And he does like, what? Yeah, and answers her, but like slowly drags his eyes away from Veruca. And it's just like, oh. Buffy does the good friend thing there.
yes. And like, I mean, I have to admit, Veruca's like band is very mesmerizing. Like, you know, if I were in the crowd, I'd be like, yeah, this is good music. But there is a difference between the way that Oz is watching and the way that Xander and Giles are watching. Like, they are like, sexy woman singing all husky. You know, she's got a very husky voice going for her. But Oz is mesmerized.
Yeah. And I mean, Giles makes the comment that, you know, she has quite a stage presence for someone her age. It's very impressive. Because Giles is also very into music and performance, and Oz has vouched for Giles's record collection.
Yep.
One thing I want to point out that is very much so like a snippet of the time right now, and I want to say for the past at least 10 years, records have like really come back like in full swing. Like, you're cool if you have them. But the time this was shot, that was not the case because we weren't so removed from vinyls and records. And they mock him for having them. And that's when Oz kind of steps in. Because now, like, that people would just be like, he has records. That's awesome. Why don't we listen to his records?
I mean, I do think that even at that time, it was only the hardcore musicians that were still into records.
Yeah.
And like the general public was not, which is why Oz is like, no, records yet. Like, records, yes, records good, because he's the only hardcore musician in the group.
Yeah.
Hardcore musician, I say with quotation marks because, you know.
Yeah, and those who do listen to records will know, like, some records, when the older music, it doesn't translate as well, specifically digitally. The sound warps, especially with some much older ones, which is something I have experienced and I got very angry about. But anyway, so the next do you want to talk anything else about the scene at the Bronze?
No, just, you know, Veruca and her band Shy being all sexy, and you can see Willow starting to be a little bit distressed, and she keeps trying to shake it off. And so the next morning, we wake up with Willow is in bed with Oz, and she's sleeping, and she's dreaming, and she's sleep talking, and at first it's, you know, she says something like, it's in the sand blaster.
Yep, sand blaster.
And that's when Oz wakes up and is like, he's asking, he's like, what's in the sand blaster, Will? And then he says, wake up, come back. He says, come back to me. Come back to me. And then she says, all Geminis to the raspberry hats. And he's like, well, now you're faking. But I want to know what all Geminis to the raspberry hats means. I'm a Gemini.
Go to the raspberry hats.
Go to the raspberry hats.
But and you know, they're having like cute morning talk, and Willow doesn't have time for any sexy time because she has to go to class, but she says tonight, and he goes, well, it's a full moon, so we can't. And she also realized she's joining a Wicca group, or going to the orientation rather, to check it out. And I'm sorry, I keep like going after my eye here because I have an eyelash in my eye and it's driving me nuts. So if you're watching this and you see me digging at my eye and pawing at it, that's why.
So, I mean, it's very cute, and they talk about, okay, well, you know, Willow says, are you okay with me not basically babysitting you in your cage tonight? And he says, the only thing I'm not unhappy about is being away from you. And it's so cute and it's so sweet. But they're also healthy enough as a couple, we think, for them to be like, you do your thing, I'll do my thing tonight.
Mm-hmm.
We think.
Yes.
Of course, other stuff is happening behind the scenes.
Yes.
So then we go to Professor Walsh's class, and Buffy has gotten such a good grade on her paper that Professor Walsh wants her to lead a discussion in the next class.
And the more impressive thing is it's better than Willow's grade, and Willow, for the first time ever, is academically jealous of Buffy, and she's very proud of her for making her academically jealous.
Yep. And she says that. She's like, you know, this is I'm actually academically jealous of you. This is great. Like, and we kind of see Buffy is flourishing a bit in this class where, you know, in the freshman, it seemed like she was just struggling with everything. And here she is, and she's doing well. And I think this is the same conversation we had when Buffy took the SATs. And you know, there is a brain in Buffy. You know, Buffy, who has all of her Slayer duties and her real world and supernatural world responsibilities, also is very intelligent and does well in classes when she's able to apply herself. Like,
she's a very capable young woman,
yes.
as Giles would say.
Yes, or as Professor Walsh would say, while snidely putting down Giles in a later episode.
Yes. So, and I like, so one of the things I love about this episode are the interactions between Buffy and Willow. They have such a good friendship. That is also really flourishing because like there were some stumblings over the past couple of seasons, which happens in friendships, especially like as we're younger. And like, I think for the most part, from this point on, we don't see as many stumbles. I'm saying this not having watched season 7 in a really long time. So don't hold me to this, but
well, there are stumbles later in this season. Spike-related stumbles later in this season.
Yes, but not like before, where like when Buffy came back and like friendship ruining stumbles, I should say.
Yeah. So there's this scene. So Willow is going to meet with Oz, and at the cafe,
and offers to buy Buffy a reward cookie.
And Buffy says first she has to go to the TA, and then she'll join her for lunch at the cafe and, you know, get her cookie. And so we see Oz arrive first, and Veruca is sitting at a table, and there's plenty of space around her, and he looks at her and she looks at him, and you can see the tension. Like, both of them have been noticing each other. And he is doing this mental thing in his head where he's like, don't sit here. This is temptation. And she calls him on it. She says, what are you going to do? Sit on the ground? And he specifically says, my girlfriend is coming. Like, and Veruca kind of passes off as in there's room for her too. But, you know, immediately when Willow does show up, Veruca is making her feel put down.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's doing it in, like, it's obvious to the viewer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where what she is saying is not in and of itself mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you were just reading, like, it's a lot of context. And the fact that then Oz just gets up and leaves.
Yep. Like, you're meeting your girlfriend for lunch, and within 2 minutes of her arriving, you bail.
Mm-hmm. And then Veruca gets up and leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Making it all that much more awkward. Like, I feel like it would have been less awkward had she stayed and tried to make conversation, but then it also would have made Veruca an entirely different person than she is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Her entire attitude was, Oz isn't here, you're not worth my time.
yep, exactly. Because there are situations that people can misjudge thinking that someone's into their significant other when they're not. It's just a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
That interaction right there proves that's not the case. Like 100% proves that is not the case. If Willow was like, maybe it is, that's not it.
Mm-hmm. And so Buffy arrives, and she's like, "Oh, everyone's leaving. Is it me?" And Willow's like, "No, it's me." And then she puts down her own shirt, which I loved. I loved Willow's shirt. Her, like, she says it looks like a cake threw up on her
A
or something
cupcake,
like that.
yeah.
But
Veruca is like, nice
yeah,
shirt. Yeah. And this isn't the first time that, like, people often have picked on Willow for her style. It's certain. I think Willow, like what she was wearing then, is more popular now
mm-hmm.
than 25 years ago or something.
No, it's not 25 years ago. It's
It,
not.
it's almost. It's almost.
1999, 22 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over 2 decades ago. I feel old.
I'll mail you a walker. um so but yes, and we see that this comment takes root later on because Willow changes up how she's dressing.
Yeah.
Not quite vampire Willow level, but a medium between
Mm-hmm.
Willow and Vamp Willow.
But I mean, at this point, Willow says to Buffy, he gets this blushy thing behind his ears. That's usually for me. Like, she has noticed specific signs of attraction.
Yes.
And Buffy says, don't worry. Like, yes, he can notice another girl, but he's not the type to stray, commenting on his dog-like qualities when he's a werewolf. And I do want to say, I don't think it's wrong to notice other people.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's wrong to act upon that. Like,
Yes.
Um,
And if you find yourself noticing someone, you probably shouldn't hang out with them like that. Like, if you're noticing that the more you're seeing this person, the stronger this attraction's growing, if you plan to stay with your significant other and not break up with them immediately, stop hanging out with that other person.
unless you're polyamorous.
Yes, obviously.
Like,
If you are in a monogamous relationship, no, and both of you have to be aware that it's a monogamous relationship.
yeah.
Like, no,
Yeah.
it does not work that way. You are going to cheat, or at the very least, you're going to hurt the person that you're with, if not the person that you're then pursuing as well.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so if I were in the Buffyverse and me and my partner, and I'm saying Billy, Billy's my husband, Billy and I were in, and we saw Veruca's band, I would totally be going like, husband, hot damn Veruca.
Mm-hmm.
But then if Veruca and I were hanging out afterwards, I would make sure I'm grabbing onto my husband to be like, yes, I'm having lusty feelings, but I will be throwing those lusty feelings back on you later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also don't if Veruca and Oz didn't have the werewolf thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think Buffy's assessment is completely correct that he would not have strayed, as
Yes.
it were. But that's not what happens here.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of wonder if this is like a dog and heat type situation. Like, I've heard vets say that they have known dogs to literally break down doors and fences to get at a bitch in heat. And like, I wonder if like Veruca was sending off female werewolf pheromones because he broke through his cage
Mm-hmm.
to meet her.
That's what I've always read it as, like that because there's a female scent out there. Also, anyone who has seen cats like outside and the noises will also tell you that this fits. Like, I think it's just like an animal lusty thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is the first werewolf month experience since getting on campus. Like, at least that's what it feels like to me, is that this is their first real werewolfy night.
Other than like, so it's the first one they've showed us, but they don't show us every month.
Yeah.
Because we know it's past Halloween already, and they would have started school in late August. So there's no way that this is it right now it's between Halloween and Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So he's definitely gone through other phases. This is probably his second one because they had to, I'm assuming they built this crypt thing in the, well, they didn't build the crypt, but they built the cage.
They built the cage in the abandoned crypt.
Yes.
You're right, but it might be the first time he's gone wolf since we've noticed Veruca.
Oh, yes.
You know, like we've seen Veruca a couple of times, but I like, you know, this is his first time werewolfing out since noticing her.
Mm-hmm. Other than when in Fear itself, where the fear takes over and he goes half wolf.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he's still Oz. It's just his. Yeah. That's a magical thing. Not that turning into a werewolf isn't a magical thing.
So, yeah.
Oz goes and he locks himself in his cage. Mm-hmm. But he does break out pretty quickly too. Like, and he just like like that door didn't stand a chance. And Professor Walsh is leaving her, well, not her room that she teaches in, because that's not how it works in college, but wherever she had just finished teaching a class, turns off the light and starts walking out. And she notices something is tracking her in the bushes. And it's Oz. And she throws her briefcase at him and runs. And thankfully for her, there is another werewolf. And she's kind of standing in between the two of them, looking back and forth. And when they lunge at her, she jumps out of the way and they hit each other. Yeah. And she's able to make her getaway. But these two werewolves are fighting, grappling. I would say they're grappling.
Yes. They are grappling, which then turns into something else.
Yes, which they can't show us on 90s TV.
Yes. And so then we wake up, or we see them waking up the next morning, and Oz wakes up first in the woods, and then Veruca wakes up behind him. They're both naked, and she says good morning, and then she starts nuzzling him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, she's like, some night, and he's, you know, trying to process what happened.
Because she has been a werewolf much longer than Oz. And she says, like, in the beginning, it's like that. You can't remember, you know, what you did the night before, but it'll start coming back to you little pieces at a time. So we know that she's been a werewolf much longer. I also have a fun fact about this scene. So Seth Green said it was really awkward doing this because he was just wearing like a man thong in it, and her boyfriend, her real life boyfriend, was visiting set that day. So yeah, he said that was real awkward. But
so I did a lot of theater back in high school and college, and I remember at first being very awkward. And then by the time I reached college, having so many set changes, everybody just gets so comfortable being naked around everybody else.
a lot of actors though will say like it's very different when the person's significant other is on set and you have to do like a sex scene with them.
Yeah.
Like that is a very different thing. Or like they'll say the same thing if that person's parent is on set. It's very, very different.
Yeah.
So Oz is not like happy about what has happened. They have to find clothes at this point. Although Veruca, keeps basically saying like we can have sex again, without saying those exact words. But they go to whatever dorm is closest and start pulling out clothes, and she's being picky about it, but Oz just pulls out stuff.
Yeah. Oz is like shirt, shorts, whatever. They don't even really match. They're very bland colors. She's wearing a black panty and black like boy short or boy cut underwear, and is lacy and cute. And she's again trying to have sex with him again. She's like, we don't have to be werewolves to have sex. And she's like pointing her toe and like little dancer feet.
Yep. And she's like horrified at the fact like that, because Oz says like, I want to find out how we got out of our cages last night. And she was just like, I don't have a cage, like, and I don't have like a little gerbil wheel or like and water ball or whatever. And Oz is kind of horrified at that because he doesn't want to kill people. And she does not mind that. She's just like, it's what we're meant to do.
Yep.
So they are very different. They are two different kinds of werewolves. So and she says that they also belong together. And Oz is having none of this. Like he wants out of there.
Yep. He says he knows where he belongs, and that's with Willow.
Yep.
Um,
And then we see Professor Walsh in the hallways talking with Riley, just saying about how these two dogs, large dogs, were going to attack. And Buffy comes up, I'm assuming to ask about the, not presentation, the discussion leading, but she catches what they're saying. And Professor Walsh rather says to her, I hope you're careful when you're walking around at night. I was attacked by these two large dogs. I thought that they were gorillas at first. And oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Oz kind of looks like a gorilla werewolf. Like there's definitely some gorilla type,
Well, especially how they run. It's very gorilla-esque. So, but the conversation that Professor Walsh and Riley are having, the way it is framed is wonderful because it just looks like a professor warning her TA about what she has experienced, and also kind of like, that's a traumatic experience. She nearly died by getting ripped apart by werewolves or gorilla dogs.
Yep.
So Buffy, takes this information and is just like, oh, I just wanted to say hi, and takes off.
Runs off to Giles.
Yes. Who is very excited to see her. But before we get there, Willow stops by Oz's dorm, and she has a different outfit on. She's wearing like pleather, dark green pants.
Yep, pleather pants, dark purple shirt that's tight but also flowy, and like
it kind of looks ill-fitting to me, but I think they just did that because she's not entirely comfortable in those clothes. And Willow, basically like she's coming on to Oz and like wants to have sex, and he brushes her off and says like he's real tired. because he's covered in scratches.
Yep.
Um,
And the thing is,
and
he doesn't even try for like a convincing lie. He wasn't like, hey, I got out of my cage. I'm a little concerned. Maybe I hurt someone last night. Like, I've got this stuff in my head. He's like hiding all of it from him.
yeah, that, and this is something he continues to do. He has a couple of chances to talk about some of at least what happens, or the fact that there is another werewolf, which is something people should know, because clearly she doesn't mind killing people. She's dangerous.
Yep.
And he chooses not to do that. He says nothing.
He makes that decision. And like, he's very introspective into himself during this time, but he is putting other people at danger while he's doing this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I are we switching to Giles's now?
You're saying Giles is watching, I don't think it's Jeopardy, but it's
like
another
Price is Right or something.
I don't think it's Price is Right.
It's some sort of like daytime television show, that it's a game show.
Yep, with categories and trivia.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Wheel of Fortune.
Hmm?
Maybe Wheel of Fortune.
It wouldn't be Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune is guessing letters.
I don't know, something.
It was like Jeopardy, but not Jeopardy.
They probably didn't want to be sued.
And Buffy arrives and she says 2 werewolves, and he's quite interested in 2 werewolves, and go ask Oz. She says Oz is her next stop. She goes and she finds Oz welding his door, and he tells her that he doesn't remember anything about what happened that night. And she's like, anything about another werewolf? He knows he knows who the other werewolf is, and he says nothing.
And then Buffy even says, something's up, like you're even quieter than you usually are. Mm-hmm. Like Buffy has noticed, and she is specifically saying something to him, and he is specifically lying to her.
Yep.
And then while all of this is going on, Willow actually goes to see Xander. Xander and his mom are fighting because Xander wants a lock on his door. I'm sorry, but he's a 19-year-old guy who is paying to live there. He most certainly should have a lock on his door. He should have had a lock on his door when he was a teenager. So, like, boundaries, woman, boundaries. And also, the not having a lock on the door did not stop him and Anya from having sex in the basement.
Yep.
But Willow comes and she wants some guidance from Xander about what's going on with Oz. And she's like, there's this girl and this guy. And Xander's just like, I know this is you and Oz. I've, decoded your clever message here. Mm-hmm. And he also at one point, Willow can't say sex, and Xander specifically says to her, if you're doing it, you should be able to say it.
Yep.
Xander, I'm very impressed with him throughout this entire conversation. He has matured quite a bit, you can tell by this conversation. He's giving her good advice, because all of her concerns, she's like, have you actually talked to Oz about this? Mm-hmm. Well, no. You should, because he's probably picking up on your feelings of like being weird, which is in a lot of situations I'm sure is true.
Well, she says, I don't want to come across as being like jealous, and he's like, but you are jealous. Like, yep. express your feelings.
Mm-hmm. And Xander gives really solid advice. Like, he's a really good friend here.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good, because Willow's going to need a lot of really good friends.
I know.
So then we have this thing of, like, as it's getting closer to dusk, and Veruca's singing, and Oz is sitting in this room alone, and Willow's at the Wicca group, and, like, she's there, but she's not there. Also, I noticed, I think it's here, that when Veruca's singing, usually when singers sing, their jaw is what moves up and down. Veruca doesn't do that. Her jaw stays in place. and her head goes up and down.
Huh.
So that's why I don't know if that's how the actress herself sings, if she's actually a singer, I assume, or if I don't know if that's how she actually sings, or if she made that choice because doing that is far more sexual than just moving your jaw.
Yep. And she's definitely, her entire body undulates as she's singing. And it's a very sexual and also animalistic look to her.
Yeah, and they do a really good job with like her makeup and even her hair to give her that like wild woman look. So, but Oz, it's almost sundown, and he has invited Veruca to his cage, basically, and she's, she says like, I'm not getting in that with you, like that's not what I'm doing. And he's saying that she needs to because it's not safe for her that there are people out hunting for them. And she still doesn't care. She's like, nope. And she's like, that's not why you want me in here. And she's right. She is 100% right. Like, maybe, I'm sure he doesn't want her to be captured, but Buffy's not looking to kill Veruca.
Because they already know that werewolves are human the majority of the time.
She's just going to trank her and put her in a cage.
Yep.
That's what she's going to do. So, she's talking, Veruca's saying to Oz about how she sensed him before they even ever met. And she's asking him repeatedly, like, did you sense me too? As she's getting closer. And she's actually like hanging in the doorway of the cage. And he just like grabs her and starts making out. Like, you can feel, they do a really good job of acting out this scene where you can feel like the tension's rising. They're like panting at each other. And then they just start making out while still human. Like, Oz is still in Oz's body.
Yep, and we see the hands. They've got the two hands that come up together that then turn into werewolf hands as they continue to have werewolfy sex.
Yes. And in the morning, it's important to notice that their clothes are in a like, they were clearly like getting naked as they were like, because their clothes aren't in shreds.
Yep.
So, the next morning, Willow comes with donuts and coffee, it looks like, for Oz. And she sees Oz being little spooned by Veruca. Naked.
Yep.
And she just drops everything in her hands, as one would.
Yep.
And Oz, sees, gets up. He's very like, Willow, Veruca gets up very smug. Like, you can see it on her face.
Yeah, well, she's totally enjoying it. She's reveling in it.
Yep. Willow's in full tears. She loves Willow's pain. And Oz is trying to explain it all away while Willow's calling him on it. She's not letting him do that. And she said, like, you knew you had a choice and you made this choice. And Veruca's like, she has a point, and Oz yells at her to leave, which she does. But, Oz throws in her face that, she made out with Xander. And he's like, I remember these feelings. Like, I remember how it felt. And Willow also makes a very valid point of, she thought they got past this, and it's also very different and they were at a very different stage in their relationship as well.
Yeah.
And it's all, what Willow's saying is very valid.
I agree, because, like, yeah, I mean, making out with someone is different. It's a different level than having sex with someone. And also, they were in different levels of their relationship. So the betrayal is bigger, the betrayal is deeper. And he made this choice. And Willow asks, did you want her in an animal way? And he doesn't respond, but the answer is yes. That, like, his lack of response is the answer.
And then she says like, more than you wanted me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where like Willow at that point runs out.
Yep.
And she's walking the streets of Sunnydale, the one street of Sunnydale,
Yep.
which is, I think, across from the cemetery at this point. I think we've established that. She's right by that little coffee shop, and she's trying to walk into the road. Buffy sees her, and there's a car barreling towards Willow, and Buffy is too far to get to her. But thankfully, Riley is right there and pulls Willow out of the way.
Just like picks her up and like.
Because Riley's a big guy. Like,
Yep.
I think Allison Hannigan's like an average size woman. Sarah Michelle Gellar's short. She's like 5'3", 5'2". But Riley is a big dude. Like, that actor is very tall.
I'm about to look it up.
Yeah, they very much so went for someone who looks like a Midwestern farm boy, because he is from the Midwest and from a very small town, and he looks like he could handle himself like when there's a lot of snow shoveling, so
Mark Blucas is 6'2". He seems bigger than 6'2".
because he's always next to Sarah Michelle Gellar, and he is a foot taller than her.
Yeah.
So he says to Willow as Buffy gets there, because she thanks him because she wasn't going to get there in time, and he says to Willow, like, whatever is going on, it's not worth hurting yourself over.
Mm-hmm.
And Buffy says like, maybe you should take her home to Buffy, which Buffy does. And Willow clearly tells Buffy everything that has happened, but Buffy now has to also do Slayer duty. But before she goes, she offers Willow chocolate anything, like, can I get you anything, literally anything. Yeah. And it's tough when you're in like a spot like that and you want to stay and help your friend, but you also have a job that you have to do. Like, that's also a very, I'm an adult and I have to do this crap type thing.
And I mean, Buffy specific, like, she's like, I gotta find her before sundown, but she's like, are you okay? Like, will you be okay? She doesn't want to leave her. Honestly, at this point, I feel like she should have called Xander. She should have been
stay
like,
with Willow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To come be with Willow, not to go find her. Yeah. Well, she probably doesn't want anyone out. Like, she doesn't want someone to be caught going from point A to point B by Veruca. Especially someone like Xander, who might smell a bit like Willow. Mm-hmm. But yeah, because I had that thought too, and that was the only thing I could think of, that like Buffy didn't want someone getting caught in the crossfire. She need, like, the less people out and about, the better. But Buffy also says to her, put the blame where it belongs. Don't blame yourself, which is really good advice.
Except
Willow's a powerful witch.
And so this is one of the times where we see Willow using magic to take action where probably magic should not be used.
Yeah, she's starting to dabble in Dark Willow, is what it is. Like,
she's abusing magic instead of using magic.
Yeah, or she's at least starting to do it, because she doesn't complete the act.
Yep.
But the other thing that between Buffy and Willow that I really liked here is Buffy, before she leaves, looks at Willow and says, I love you. Which I really love normalizing, telling people that you love, who are not your romantic partner or like a parent, that you love them. I think it's very important, and I love that they're doing it here, because Willow definitely needs to hear that at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Platonic love is something that I've really also been working on, is, just telling my friends as they're driving home at night, as I'm hanging up the phone, I love you. Like, I tell you that all the time now. I love you. But
I love you.
but it was something, it was so awkward at first for me to just say that, to say to my friends, except that I love them, and I want them to know that they are loved. And, you know, so I do agree. I love that part where she says it to her friend that she loves her.
And I think it's one of the first times that she says this in the series. I don't know if it's the first. Because they've been through so much, one would think that would have had to have happened, but maybe not. So as soon as Buffy leaves, Willow does go over to her little chest of, Buffy has her chest of Slayer things, Willow has her chest of Wicca things. We all have our secret chests, right?
Yep. So I have my secret chest of sex toys.
But the first place that Buffy goes is to Oz, and is just like, you're gonna help me find her. And Oz is like, yep, like there are certain places that, you know, we're drawn to, so I should be able to help with that. And then he tries to explain to Buffy, and Buffy is like, shut up, basically. Yep. She's like, I don't want to hear it. That's not what I'm here for. My loyalty is to Willow. You done fucked up. And Willow is it. So the lab that she's in 100% looked like a kitchen to me at first, based on like, I was like, is she in the dorm kitchen just like whipping up her magic spell? But no.
Apple does.
Yeah, but she's not, apparently. And to be fair, in college, not too many people are going to look twice. As long as it doesn't smell bad, no one's going to give a shit. So Oz and Buffy are tracking Veruca through the woods. Willow's doing her spell. Things are levitating now, and she's not, you can tell she's not meaning for them to levitate. Which we know means Willow's emotions are running high from
the pencil
incident. And Oz and Buffy stumble across a pile of Veruca's clothes, and they realize she's trying to like throw them off her scent. And Oz realizes immediately that Willow is in danger. And he takes off, Buffy takes off, and Buffy runs right into a commando.
Yep.
Guns go a-flying. She's really lucky she picked up the right gun.
Yep. And they leave. You know, there's the brief scuffle and then opposite directions, but at that point Oz is already ahead. So then we see Veruca, and she's saying, you know, I'm surprised. I thought you were going to go through with it. Like I would understand. And Willow, when it came time to toss Oz's photo into the fire, she couldn't do it. Yep. And so she decides not to hex Oz. Like, you know, she's hurt, but she's not going to hex Oz. But Veruca is saying, you know, you've got to protect what's yours. And she's saying it because she is saying that Oz is hers.
And when she entered the room, Veruca locked the door behind her. And the sun is almost at sunset. And right after Veruca delivers that line, she takes and she hits Willow, and Willow goes down.
Yep.
And that's when Oz busts through the door. None too pleased. And Veruca basically at that point makes it very clear that she is going to kill Willow, so they can be together. And Oz makes a choice right then and is like, yeah, we're animals, we kill, and he goes after Veruca.
Yep. So they fully transform, and he rips her throat out.
Yeah.
He kills Veruca and rips her throat out, and like, oof. So I wonder how much of humanity like carries over, that when he transformed, he didn't have sex with werewolf Veruca. Veruca had become a danger to Willow, and thus the animal side killed her. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, like it maybe because it had been like it wasn't long after the transformation, he was still able to like because it is not a long fight. Like he overpowers her pretty quickly. This is clearly not a vampire situation where the longer you're a werewolf, the stronger you are. Um, Oz wants it more. He wants to kill her far more than because Veruca doesn't want to kill Oz. She wants to kill Willow.
Yep.
But then Willow, who is traumatized right now, reaches out because she's definitely thinking what you're thinking. Like, is Oz like still conscious in there? He is not, because he lunges for Willow now, and thankfully Buffy has got there and grabs him and like tosses him away, and then tranks him.
Yep.
And then goes to Willow, and Willow just starts sobbing in Buffy's lap as Buffy like holds her.
Yep, because her boyfriend cheated on her. The woman that her boyfriend cheated on her with tried to kill her, and then she witnessed her boyfriend kill the woman who was trying to kill her that her boyfriend cheated on her with.
Yes. Yes.
That's traumatic. So traumatic.
Very true. And then her boyfriend then almost nearly killed her as well, except her best friend showed up and tranquilized him.
Trauma.
It's a lot of trauma right there. Willow needs a cookie.
Yep.
And all of the hugs. So
we flashed, like she's crying, and we flash to Buffy talking to Giles, and Giles saying, "I'm not sure I understand." And then we realize she's telling him about the commandos.
Yep.
And she said, you know, there's military people on campus. They are apparently working. They're going after monsters, maybe? Like, you know, she points out that she saw them on Halloween, thought it was a costume. Now she realizes that they were out patrolling.
Mm-hmm.
So he says he's going to look into it. He asks about Willow, you know, points out that Buffy has also been severely wounded romantically before. Mm-hmm. Buffy points out the way that she responded is not the way that she hopes that Willow responds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he says, like, you know, you got through it. And it's funny because Buffy says, like, yeah, I ran away and went to hell and then came back. Because the phrase, I went to hell and back is common. But Buffy actually went to a hell dimension and then came back. And that's when she came home. Like, so I thought that was a fun play on, like, a very common saying.
Yep.
And then we see Willow goes to Oz's, and he's packing up his stuff. He's packing, like, a big duffel bag, which, side note, I really love the sound that it makes as he's packing the bag. I just really like that sound. I was like, oh, that's pleasing.
I'm going to have to rewatch now to listen for the sound.
Yeah, I'm going to be like Googling ASMR later of duffel bags being packed. But he wasn't going to tell her he was leaving.
Mm-hmm.
He was just leaving.
Yep. And she says, is this your solution? And he says, no, this is my decision. And I hate that answer, but it's also the correct answer. He's not solving anything, but he has made a decision. He's made a lot of decisions this episode.
Yeah. But
this final one, you know, ultimately, and Willow says, don't I get a say in this? And sometimes in relationships, the answer is no, you don't get a say in that. And yeah, he has made the decision to leave. I don't disagree with Oz's decision to leave. Like, I think he makes a very good point. Like, he doesn't know anymore where the human to werewolf line is. They're bleeding into each other, which makes him dangerous. And it doesn't make him fully in control of himself anymore. Like, he realizes now that there's a bunch of werewolf stuff that he does not know about. And he needs, it's not even just a want, he needs to understand this. What I disagree with is him just packing up and leaving. Like, he needed to have a conversation. He owes Willow that. Yes, it's going to make it harder on him to leave, but tough cookies
she deserves that at this point, especially after everything he has put her through this past episode.
Yeah.
So Willow says to him, like, don't you love me anymore? And his response was, my whole life, I've never loved anything else. Not anyone, anything. Like, it's just Willow.
Yeah.
And that is the part that, like, doesn't matter how many times I see this episode, I sob. Sob. I cried so, I told Jasmine that, I cried so hard rewatching this, my eyes hurt.
And it's so hard. And throughout this episode, the acting is so good. Like the part where Oz is withholding, and like, you know, the words are there, but you can also sense the, you know, the distance, the emotional distance, and the awkwardness, and you know, it all so, and right up to the end where he's starting the van.
Oh, yep.
And you think he's going to stop, but then he doesn't. He drives, the emotions, all the pain, and
because he doesn't want to leave Willow. He, like, it is 100% true. At no point do I doubt that he loves Willow.
mm-hmm.
That does not mean that he does not make terrible decisions that hurt her.
Yes. Yeah.
Because those two things are not exclusive. Someone can love you and they can hurt you. Mm-hmm. And he's made the, like, decisions that he knew would eventually lead to her being hurt.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, like him just getting into his van and driving away, and Willow crying. And the way that Willow's crying, I know I've cried like that. Like, I know I've made those face, like, Allison Hannigan does just such a great job of taking anyone who's experienced relationship pain like this and, oof, yep.
Yeah.
Because it's also leaving them off at a weird point, right? Like, it's over, but it's not over. Like, we know that. We can sense it. As I'm sure Willow can as well.
Huh.
What?
I'm looking at Veruca stays in her werewolf form.
Yeah, after she's killed.
After she's killed, but wasn't it McManus who was saying that, like, when they die, they turn back into human?
Yeah, but we never see that in the show. These are the only werewolves, like, going off of Veruca, because I think she's the only werewolf we ever see die in the show. It's the only time in lore that you see that you don't see someone turn back, and it could be just they didn't want to show a woman with her throat ripped out.
Maybe, yeah.
But I feel like they've shown a lot of things, so who knows? Maybe they got a warning from the network or something, or they felt that showing like a human like that would have taken away from the situation, what was happening. Like, Veruca's done, like, we don't need to think about her anymore, focus on everything else that's going on.
I also wonder, does she remain in werewolf form after sunrise? Like, the sunrise come and her body turns back into Veruca?
Maybe that's it.
All right, anyways, that is that episode, and we are going to continue to
yep,
see,
to that.
we're going to continue to sigh and cry, to see Willow's pain evolve through the rest of this, you know, season,
and to see her start to heal.
But next week we are coming back in LA, City of Angels, with Sense and Sensitivity.
Yes. And I will say one other thing. So Willow has, I mean, I don't count Xander because they weren't in a relationship, but she has 3 romantic partners throughout the series. I strongly, again, I have not watched the 7th season in a long time, but I strongly agree with 2 of them. And it's not the 3rd one. but we'll see how I feel going forward. I love, even with how it ends, I still love the Oz and Willow relationship.
Yep.
Because this is a painful episode, but man, is it a good episode. Like, it's one you always remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, Marty Noxon, you tear my heart apart a lot, but I love it. And I love you. And
this is really a how to be a good friend episode.
mm-hmm.
If you want to put a positive spin on it.
Yep. Well, and we'll talk more about it later.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for just jostling with me.
Yeah, we'll see you in LA next week.